Okay, so my name is Rodrigo. I'm the CEO of TicketPass, which is the first ethical ticketing platform. Which I know ethical. What is ethical nowadays? Why sustainability nowadays? So that's why we're here. Yeah, we're going to talk about what is happening around the world. We're going to talk about what are the current issues, what can we do, and we have a small panel as well that very expert on their field. I'll let them introduce themselves as well. But also, I wanted to have these, not to be a normal discussion panel where you just kind of hear us talking of our experiences and giving you some tips and advices, and you just go like, okay, great, and then just go home. But actually make it a little bit more conversational. What are your thoughts about it? What are the challenges that you're having? So we can kind of brainstorm and tell you a little bit more, what can you do? So I'll let my panelists here introduce themselves. Ingrid?
Thank you, Rodrigo. Welcome, everybody. My name is Ingrid Beutler, so I'm a board member of Sport and Sustainability International, which is an international non-profit organization based here in Switzerland, in Lausanne, at the Maison du Sport. So I've been working for 20 years here in Switzerland, a former elite athlete, international lawyer, been the last 5 years with the International Olympic Committee as head of integrity, and have recently transitioned and working full-time now on sustainability matters, recognizing it is the new way of operating and functioning as businesses. So we look forward to sharing a little bit of the few case studies and ideas that we have with you all today. Thank you.
Gert.
Yeah, good day everyone, and very nice to see you. It's nicely spread out. But my name is Geert Hendricks. I'm one of the co-founders of the Shift Agency. It's a company based a few hundred meters down the road here at the Maison du Sport. We're a young agency with about a dozen of people, and we work primarily with sport organizations and organizations that are in this whole supply chain of sport on topic of sustainability. So that ranges from sponsors, that range suppliers, but a lot of them also event organizers like Ski World Cup, European Club Rugby, cycling, the Paris Olympics, but also more local events like the company behind the Geneva Marathon, etc. So really a mix of organizations. I come from the field, if you want. I've got like 10 years working on a variety of projects really on implementing sustainability. A lot with federations, always being based here, even though I'm Dutch of origin, but I've always been working with federations, with the Olympic movement, on really helping them kind of getting the topic implemented. So lots of feet in the clay and making it happen. And now working with a great team here in Lausanne with different sport organizations.
Thank you, guys. So, I mean, I won't start with any soft questions, but I guess straight to the point is, why do we need to make sports more sustainable?
Okay, you want the right answer or?
Yeah, let's put not the political right answer and the cliche, because
I'm Dutch, so don't worry, we're bad in politics. So I would be curious to hear from any of you, like actually what you think, why it makes sense to invest in sustainability. Is there anyone who wants to shout?
Yeah, we want to survive. So
because it's?
We want to survive.
You want to survive, okay?
Yeah. Sustainability is all about as well sustainability community. So Asian populations, disabled people.
Okay, really the community side of things. Anyone else? Why do we have this panel? Why does it make sense to even spend time on this? I probably give you two things. One, I think most of you here are either making money through sport because it's part of your business, or you're in a federation, so you're promoting sport. And for me, those are two key reasons. Is like you want the sport to stay because it's the part through which you make your money with your company, or as a federation responsible for growing your sport. And I give you a few examples why I think the future of sport is at stake through sustainability. We lost 30 days. I live like almost 15 years in Switzerland now. In this time, the ski season, and I'm talking on the control of Sarah, but I think the ski season here got shorter 30 days in 15 years only. So that means like if you organize ski events, if you're selling equipment to ski organizations, you need to address really something here because you're gonna lose the sport events there. Another topic, working with another federation who says, my sponsors, they demand to have sustainability practices in place, to have an integrity policy in place because of all the things that happen now. They don't want to be associated with my organization as one of the big title sponsors if we do not have our house in order. So if you want to get sponsorship funding in, especially when you get to the more significant sponsorship amounts, these companies, they do have that in their policy. So they say you do have that in place. As an organization to make money, it is something that requires. Last thing, inclusion of women, very much needed in sport. There's the good thing to do side to it, but why does football continue to grow? Why does rugby continue to grow? Because of women's football, because of women's rugby, because the women have to do a lot of catching up here. So the growth of your sport by really investing in women is another example. I think if you want to continue to grow, there's areas where you really need to work. So, sorry, I'm probably too long, but that's some of the things. I don't know, Ingrid, from your side.
I fully agree with what you've shared, Gert. And it's true, it's a paradigm change, I think, for all of the sports. It's recognizing that the most successful businesses in the world today have sustainability at their heart. So it's no longer selling a product, you're selling your purpose, your why are you there? And as sports, sometimes we are a little bit behind. We react to scandal, we react to issues. And I mean, ski is a prime example. They're having to adapt how they function because they're getting less and less ski days. You know, the number of times that an event is having to be cancelled, postponed. Many parts of the world now, you know, even if we think Gold Coast, Brisbane, you know, these massive weather events that are happening now because of climate change. So as sports organisations, we are having to adapt. But we've got a lot of learning that we can take now from the business world as well. We look at some of the success stories like Unilever. I'll take that as an example. They've positioned sustainability at the heart of who they are, and their sales, it's something like 47% of their sales are linked with sustainability products now. So it's really part of who they are. Take another like Orange, for example, where they'll be promoting social issues like addiction to internet. So all of their sales tactics are on a social issue, which is actually not part of the product. So it's the reorientation of the purpose of the organization. So as sports, we're really having to rethink who we are as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ingrid and Gert. I think it goes a little bit into surviving. I think we all have to acknowledge that the world is going upside down. Basically, we don't have many years left, and it doesn't look like the big companies are really doing much about it. Governments also, they move very slow. I always compare them to cruise versus, you know, small businesses, small organizations can move a little bit faster, like a speedboat, right? So I think it's in our hands to kind of make the decisions that we can to be more sustainable, but we can go from the sustainability side, not only from planting trees, you know, it takes 30 years, we don't have 30 years. But also thinking about from the commercial point of view, because I know some of you are also commercial leads, the new generations are actually making decisions based on sustainability. So if you don't do it now, your competitor will do it, and they'll take the market share. So those two things to consider is, yes, for the planet, but also could be quite profitable if you actually think about it. Something that I would like to acknowledge and put into discussion, I went to an event a few weeks ago, and the main topic was big events versus sustainability. And I really wish they had spoken a little bit more about it, because as you guys know, an event, a World Cup, has, you know, massive economic upside for the city, for the sport, for lots of local businesses, etc. And not only in the city, but all around the world, celebrations, etc. However, what is the impact? What is the impact of all those drinks and beers, the food, the rubbish that is generated, T-shirts, flags, vuvuzelas, all this stuff, the aftermath, and not only for sports, but any other event. So, yeah, it would be good to discuss what are your thoughts about an event like this, the pros and cons.
It's a challenging one because the raison d'être, or the reason that sport exists, or international elite sport, is we travel. You know, it's part of being an elite athlete. You travel around the planet, you compete. So now, in the work that we're doing with a lot of the sports rights holders, is seeking to really look more at the quality of the event, try to question the number of competitions. The sport that I'm coming from, which is cycling, they've been quite, I'd say, successful in how they structure a lot of the elite. If we look at, say, cross-country mountain biking, the competitions are happening now, and they try to keep them centralized. So they'll have short track on Friday night, then you have the longer event on the Sunday. All the athletes are coming in, and then they remain within Europe, for example, and then they'll travel. So it has taken a whole different thinking to make the sport attractive, but also to minimize the travel, because that's where our greatest carbon footprint is. It is in the travel, and that's, I mean, we have so many studies. So it's how to obviously measure the impact of it, how to reduce. So that's rethinking of the calendar of each of the sports as well to ensure that they remain attractive, particularly for the younger generation. There's an expectation now that all events are sustainable, and if we're not proving, if we've got plastic straws, you just cannot have plastic. You know, you really have to have the public transport sorted out. You have to have, you know, so many dimensions. Where's the energy sourced from? It's the expectation, and we're getting that pressure now from the public, and that comes out in the media if there's wrong being done. But I mean, it's a challenge, but we all love sport. That's why this is our livelihood, so we want to really move and ensure that we're making best efforts that we can. But yet,
Yeah, just one thing to add is not to forget that we keep sport at the heart, because what we sometimes see is that we completely go bonkers on sustainability, and I'm the first one to do because working in the field, etc. But I give an example of, for example, the ocean race, which my colleague is working for. They are very successful as sport event, as sailing event, because it's an amazing event. They have a super high quality sport, and through that, they can really address the sustainability topic, either in the event itself or through the sport. They can impact a lot of other organizations, and they attract companies who want to be associated with them. But the first thing they do is making sure that you keep the sport at the heart of the event. Because if you just throw that away and you say it's all about green, it's all about sustainability, and the sport becomes secondary, then you're going to kill the whole model. Because we are sport events, and a good sport event needs to have this environmental, social, and environmental balance. That's sustainability, to be right. But just don't kind of destroy the whole side of sport by only trying to make it green. And one thing to add is what you often see is sustainability through sport, through athletes, through events. You've got a huge impact. We've seen it with different societal campaigns recently. I'll give an example. I'm also involved in the Sport and Sustainability NGO that Ingrid represents. We spoke about football for climate some time ago, and we made a post. I've got, I think it's now 7 followers on Instagram, and that doesn't even include Ingrid. But we shared it with one of the football players. I don't know if there's any Italians here who know Barbara Bonanzelli. She is like a star in football and has 600,000 followers on Instagram. She shared it through her Instagram channel, and the whole message of awareness around the impact of plastic, etc., in football, all of a sudden got visibility on 600,000 instead of on 6 people. So through sport, you get messages way further. So it's a really important, I would say, vehicle language, but don't just destroy the sport and only focus at sustainability. Keep the sport at the heart and use that to really improve the functioning of it.
Thank you, Gert. So I was going to say, how can an organization start? I mean, I know that there's a lot to do, right? Like if you think about from the idea to the permissions, to the venue, to absolutely the energy, like little things, but what would it be the first step that they could do?
First step, I think, is measure so that you know where you are. Measure your footprint. For example, when you talk about carbon emissions, etc., somehow you need to know, is the footprint of our event 50, 100 or 250, so that you can start kind of managing these things. I mean, if you run a company, you need to have a balance sheet. You need to know like what sort of numbers and a budget you're managing. Same thing with that. If you don't know that, it's very hard to say like, okay, are we doing well or not? And I think then a second thing is strategy is always this like big word that includes everything and nothing, but have a common direction. Where do we want to go? What do we want to communicate on? I'll take an example of an organization, outdoor sport organization I worked with, and if you're on your phone, you can Google it, like Rethink Sport. They really focused on sport is our playground. It's like nature related because it was very close to the core of their sport. I think the Rowing Federation focused very much on water. So you take a topic that's really focused and then you build your strategy around it so that you really have a focus and a strategy in place that helps you direct your activities. Because otherwise, you might be familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 goals. It's way, way too much for a sport organization to do. So measure and focus. And from there, you can start putting activities in place and everything that follows and following up on it as well.
Yeah, it fully echo what gets said. Really starting the measure, it's quite scientific, so we can't do it all. We're not experts in everything, and I think sustainability, it is such a broad topic. Even from the legal perspective, there's more and more regulations, legal requirements, reporting requirements as well. So you do need to work with experts as well who know in every country there'll be different regulatory requirements that are needed. But as organizations, we sort of try to encourage it's the purpose, it's the why. Your direction, rowing was mentioned, it might be, various, I work a lot with the mountain sports. So those who really are more, operating in the environment that is the most susceptible to climate change, which is the alpine environment, and those sports are radically having to rethink who they are and how they operate. Measure, reduce. We have to think how we can reduce our waste, reduce our carbon footprint. Really reduce, and then moving forward with that often complex sustainability strategy. On the social dimension, which is a key pillar of sustainability. It's often every sport is unique. Gert mentioned, football, rugby, those sports that were typically male dominant as well, and now they're, really taking off as global sports because of the, increasing engagement with the females, and a lot of sports cycling as well. They've done very successfully, so that's linked to broadcast rights and everything like that. So, really important.
Thank you, great. I think I'll just open the floor actually, not the door. The door is open. Open the floor for a couple questions. Just feel free to ask anything. Don't be shy.
Thanks very much. Just a question around ISO 2012-1. Is that something that you still encourage and push your clients to adopt, or does it need a bit of a revamp?
I'll go from the association perspective, yes, fully. The Olympic Games have, since its adoption and after the London Games, they always try to be certified. We're working with a number of major events who are trying to be, it's a good management system. It's rather complex to use, so you do need to work with consultants, such as The Shift, to understand how it works. But yes, it's at the moment probably the leading standard on event management. But it's a competitive market. A number of the commercial brands, we've got B Corp companies now, which is also a very nice framework but that's more for the private sector. It's coming from the US. The ISO standards themselves go through a pretty complex, I'd say democratic process. But yes.
Something else I would like to add with these certification, B Corps, etc. I think it's great to have them. Many companies are trying to collect them, like if they were Pokemon cards. They're not that easy to get, but some people still get them without really being that, sustainable, and they're using it because it's very impactful for the revenues of the company. So fair enough. What I would suggest is even if you cannot get one of these certifications, that doesn't really stop you from making good decisions, selecting good providers. It's a roadmap. You might be a small organization, and to get just the example of the B Corp, it takes so many paperwork and tick boxes. So just don't be discouraged from that and do any decisions. This is going to sound really silly, but I once met an event organizer that they ended up making their entire event sustainable from start to end, but even the toilet paper that they used, and it sounds something silly, but even on a day-to-day, you can make little decisions that, of course, they won't get it, just because they use the toilet paper, but little things like that also can influence in a bigger scale. And it shows an example for your colleagues as well. Any other questions as well from the floor? All right. I have one more question, and then I'll just let you guys share the last message that you would like to be. How can we accelerate sustainability? Because we are in a moment of crisis, for say. What can we do? In one sentence.
We need to be brave. We need to step out of our traditional boundaries of functioning, thinking that we can just organize an elite or any sports event, in fact, as they've always been organized. It's a phrase that I heard a few weeks ago at a conference, and it really touched me, because it's like, it's the most dangerous phrase in the world that exists at the moment is on a toujours fait comme ça. We've always done like that. Why do we change in the sports movement? We do need to change. The planet's telling us we need to change, and the world is, we just have to change. So it's courage. But the help is out there. There's so many toolkits and guidelines and support, more and more in transitioning as well. I mean, take myself, I was in integrity working on the criminal dimension of sport. And now there's, this is much more important. We've got such a short time as well. Even if we look at the targets set by the UNFCCC Sport for Climate Action Frameworks, by 2030, we need to be, well, now they've adjusted, half of our emissions by 2050 climate neutral. And most of the sports probably here today haven't even started measuring their carbon footprint. They don't even know. And then we have to look about, offsetting and then, reducing. So there's a whole lot of work. We're doing a big piece of work at the moment on actual carbon offsetting funds to ensure that the offsetting funds then can benefit sport. So it might be reforestation and areas where there's, sports events taking place. But that's another topic, not of today. But yeah, courage.
Thanks, Ingrid.
I would say team up. You got one word instead of one sentence. The only thing I think the way forward is to really kind of team up. And what I mean by that is like you as your organization, let's say your federation, with your suppliers, with your sponsors, with your athletes, with your fans, etc. And that's why it's important to kind of, as federation in this case, to kind of have a strategy, have a clear message. Bring them on, bring them in. There's 99% sure your sponsors, they have a certain strategy. You can work together with them on it. And don't try to kind of do it on your own. Team up with your whole supply chain, or even between sports. In the motorsport, for example, there's initiatives by powerboating, FIA, FIM, and all these motorsport federations that even as motorsports, they combine because they're all kind of after the same sort of problems. We just worked on an air quality in sport challenge. Air quality is a topic that is a problem for many different sports. We had cycling, Formula E, athletics, and a couple of other sports involved. And actually we teamed up, and together we threw a competition to say we need to find the best solutions in this specific field. So even across sports, you need to somehow kind of team up and work together on this, because then you can go much further. And I think linked to that, it's also in the industry when it comes to investments. Something happening in the sailing industry now, and the marine industry, the maritime industry, is that actually universities and suppliers of composite materials and racing events, etc., they start to team up, because ultimately it's an issue that touches all of them, and probably suppliers can put in some funding, universities can put in some research knowledge, and that's a way to kind of move forward. If you just, with all respect, the World Sailing Federation, it's going to be much more difficult on your own to kind of sail through this whole topic.
And if I may, yeah, so it's very much touching on the innovation piece, because often we don't have the solutions, but people and companies like to use sport as effectively a pilot as well. So it's really the university, also the civil society as well, because often if your sport is linked with a particular like social or environmental issue, then it strengthens on the messaging is to partner with civil society, and I think that's kind of a new partnerships that we're working, we mentioned the mountain sports before, and often we're working with civil society actors to pass through the messaging. It facilitates a lot of communication as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Rickard. Well,
There's
hopefully you guys...
one question. Yeah.
Oh, one question.
Yeah, this question is a bit provocative and probably without
good answer, but still, can we call ourselves sustainable if the biggest sponsor of the biggest event in the world is Gazprom, Shell, Coca-Cola? So how we can merge this business approach, having these names in the list, and still call ourselves sustainable? Thank you.
I love it. I mean, all these events, they do require, that economic boost at the beginning. I don't expect anyone to change their household for, say, completely green overnight. I think it's a process. And as companies, Coca-Cola is a company has existed for, many, many years. They came to a position, economic position, where they can facilitate and they can sponsor, etc. There will be ethical companies, there will be sustainable companies in the upcoming years that they'll have those positions. And I think these bigger events should start making these more conscious decisions of who do they want to actually partner with. And I think that's kind of my final messaging for you guys is just be conscious of which partners, which suppliers, team up, be brave, start measuring you actually want to work with. Because you come into decisions, maybe you don't have the decision power, but you can influence the decision power. And deciding between a normal apple and a fair trade apple, if you multiply it, it can actually make a big difference. So hopefully one day it's only ethical companies running sports. But I think what I love about sports, it is community. It does have the power of inspiring people, all ages, all genders. And I think, if sustainability comes, I think we should be leading that. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much. We will go to thank you very much for this very interesting session on a crucial subject and for your time.